What's going on, y'all? So we're back. I'm gonna watch this video called "How Pokemon Black and White Were Made a Complete Timeline" by Turtle Bro. So a lot of you guys know that Gen 5 is my favorite Pokemon, technically Pokemon generation of all time. It's probably my favorite one, only because of its rich storytelling and then like it also brought whole new Pokemons into the franchise. I think this is probably my favorite one so far. Out of all of the Pokemons so far, this is my favorite one, and I played the fuck out of Pokemon Black and White and Black and White too. And it was one of the generations where it even had a sequel, right? But I believe that this was when Game Freak was at its peak, right here. Black and White and Black and White 2 was is they were at their peak. And it's unfortunately when this game came out, it didn't do well only because the fans at that time didn't appreciate the gem that it is now. But yeah, they were but yeah, man, I'm gonna watch this video. I also kind of like put up the speed a little bit because I don't want it to drag too much because it's 19 minutes. But I enough the yapping, bro. I'ma just like get right into it. So this is a video by Turtle Bro.
So, Diamond and Pearl launched on September 28, 2006, and while Game Freak still had to roll out Platinum for Gen 2 remakes and juggle
All right.
localization dates, they had
Mm-hmm.
almost 4 years of prep time for Generation 5,
Wow,
which was
only
a lot
four
for the DS
years.
era, especially considering recent generations now have less development time despite being way more technically demanding. And if you saw the Diamond and Pearl deep dive, you'll know Game Freak poured everything into Gen 4 to
Wow,
try and make the ultimate
that
Pokemon
is true.
experience at the time. Thus, Gen 5 became the grounds for a philosophical reboot of a series. First overseas-based region,
Yup.
strictly new Pokemon, a big
Yes.
push towards storytelling, and
Yes.
overall just a fresh experience.
And I believe like they accomplished all three of this. I mean, not all three, all four. I believe that they accomplished all four of these because I'm gonna be real with you. Like number two and number three, and definitely number four was honestly they accomplished all four of it, and it was all great in my opinion. Like they did it right. Like honestly, and that time the fans weren't in my did not appreciate it. They just didn't appreciate it. I believe like the fans back then they just wanted after Gen 4 they were just trying to get they weren't really looking for anything new. They were just like, oh, why can I not play Charizard or why can I not play this or why can I play the Kanto region, technically the Kanto Pokemons and stuff like that. I believe like Gen 5 didn't sell well because of the nostalgia. Like people, the fans back then were just playing into the nostalgia too much. Nostalgia got into their head, so it's like Gen 5 was a whole new thing, and now they're just like, hell nah, just like let me play my shit. But it's crazy. The post game, you could get those Pokemons back in the post game, but like starting out and you're playing these new Pokemons, bro, people did not like that shit.
It was a bold time for Pokemon, and thanks to the Terra Leak, we now have access to hundreds, if not thousands of beta builds from this really strange experimental era. And now I've created a full timeline for it. Huge shout out to the bomb, I couldn't have made this
Shout
video
out to the
without you,
bomb.
and MD Travis, the legend who
Shout out to
compiled a
MD
ton of the builds
Travis
for now
too.
be talking about. Before we dive in, if you enjoy videos like this, don't forget to subscribe to keep up with all of my latest uploads.
Late 2006. That's
So
crazy.
according to the compiler himself, MD Travis, the black and white repo dates back to late 2006. And sure,
Mm,
while Gen 5 wasn't Game Freak's main focus at the time, the build surfaced as far back as here. Seeing as
okay.
though this was just weeks after Diamond and Pearl had released, most of the team were probably busy prepping for Platinum and the Gen 2 remakes, while a
Wow,
very
that's
small
nice.
group were assigned to the Gen 5 project, building out tech demos for the next year and a half.
Mm,
In the middle of this tech demo phase, we have May 6, 2007. This is
wow.
called the Dungeon Tech Demo. It's basically just a character running around a 3D maze. Most
Also, they were planning on making. That's crazy. I didn't know that. They were planning on making black and white 3D, but then I'm pretty sure they just gave up. They were like, nah, we should just stick to what we got, but just animate it. That's pretty cool.
Notably, the player character is a 3D model of May. Now it's unclear if this specific demo was made in-house by Game Freak, or if it was sourced from another engine, but the presence of May as a playable model strongly suggests they were experimenting with breaking out of 2D sprites,
Yeah.
over 6 years before X and Y released. Honestly, the model itself deserves a spotlight. I think it looks great,
It looks
and it's the
good.
closest we have to translating the classic Pokemon sprites and proportions into 3D.
Honestly, I think that they should have yeah, this would have been okay if they actually brought this out like in 2007, like if they brought this out like let's say Gen 5 was like 3D but it looked like that, it, people will be okay with it, honestly. It would have been all right. It looks kind of it does look like May. So sure they might have to like roughen it out a little bit, like fix it a little bit on the face and all that, but other than that though, it's pretty good.
Even just watching it run around, you can see the vision. The potential is
Yeah, I
there.
can see it. Yeah, the
Fast forward a
potential.
week, and now May has a hammer and a bow. You can swap between them too. I assume this was for testing object handling or equipment mechanics,
Right, right,
maybe as
right.
a precursor to item-based overworld puzzles. Not sure
Hmm.
how it would have translated to Pokemon gameplay though. The next day, the build featured a tech demo for a cancelled remake of Yoshi no Tamago, a puzzle
Okay.
game from the Super Nintendo. This
Okay.
remake never released. There's no record of its development, and this early black and white build is the only trace of its existence. For
Interesting.
the rest of 2007, it was mostly just tech demo tinkering. As I mentioned, the main dev team was locked into Platinum and the Gen 2 remakes. But we
Wow.
do know that Black and White were officially pitched on April 13th, 2007. If you
Wow,
haven't watched my
nice.
Black and White deep dive yet, I highly recommend checking it out
I
after
might
this.
check
But a
that
quick
out.
recap,
I'm
the
definitely
pitch
gonna
doc
check that out.
outlined how Gen 5 were already planning to base the region on New York. Many of the game's pitched features were also very ambitious. Skipping ahead to April 1st, 2008, the tinkering phase is officially over, and it's a special day because it marks the official start of program development for Pokemon Black and White, just
Nice.
under a
Okay.
year after the pitch. This build features a more evolved version of the dungeon tech demo. May has been replaced with a completely different model. The character has realistic proportions, tall frame, longer limbs. It honestly feels less like Pokemon and more like a random 3DS prototype.
Yeah, that does look way different. That does not look like Pokemon. Was that Game Freak trying to start like a their own kind of RPG, action RPG game? I ain't gonna lie, that would be an action RPG Pokemon game will be fire though. Like let us not control the let us not control the like we could be so like what I would think is this is another bold thing I would say is like you could be walking or running right and then you see a Pokemon, you throw your Pokemon out and then once your Pokemon comes out, you control your Pokemon and it has like a it has like 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 you could control your Pokemon. You don't control the trainer. You control the Pokemon itself, and it has these four moves, and then you just you it's like an action RPG, and then like the game style will probably be like I don't know, like Kingdom Hearts or like I don't know, um I wouldn't say Neo because Neo is kind of like crazy, but I still like something like that, like an action RPG. That would be cool instead of turn-based. It'd be action RPG. I think it would be fire. It would sell.
Except this is still running on the Nintendo DS. Like you could boot this on your DS Lite. While I'm conflicted on this topic, and I doubt Game Freak ever truly planned to go this direction for Gen 5, the demo shows that they were pushing the limits, even
Hmm.
just as an internal benchmark. The same build included a three-dimensional Tetris puzzle demo. Then, just 2 days later, the dungeon demo had evolved even further. The character model is way more detailed, and you can
Wow.
now switch between multiple outfits. The screen has visible toggles and options that affect gameplay, and most bizarrely, roaming Charizard models start appearing. Game Freak was actively pushing the DS hardware. Black
Wow.
and White didn't even have any 3D models of Pokemon, besides in the opening and the legendary cutscenes. You see this character
Man,
jumping
that's
around here,
cool.
and quickly it feels like Pokemon was heading in a completely different direction.
Yeah,
A
it
day
look
later, it escalates. Now there's an entire squad of giant Charizards surrounding the player. It's a pretty surreal experience, honestly. But again, this is just benchmark testing the engine. Then we get to April 13th. The demo now features a wide, flat test map, with tons of Pokemon NPCs running around, and those giant Charizards are still here. What's interesting is that the player character is invisible, and even more notably, the NPCs aren't gridlocked anymore. I think it's worth highlighting the fact that at this point, it's clear that Game Freak wasn't just building on top of the
okay.
Gen 4 engine. You'd assume they just took the Gen 4 framework and built on top of it. But no,
Okay.
this is all Generation 5 was in April 2008, a completely new foundation, where the focus was on reinventing the engine and redefining what a Pokemon game could be.
That's pretty cool. I'm not even going to lie. So they were trying to really do an open world thing for Gen 5. Interesting. Interesting. I don't could Gen 5 work as an open world thing? I don't yeah, I think it can. I honestly think it can.
Moving along a few months, we get to the August 8th build, one of the most legendary builds in the entire development timeline. This is the open world tech demo I've talked about before, a
Right.
hugely ambitious, sandbox style Pokemon build. The camera is fully rotatable, and there's no grid system at all. It's the most open we've ever seen 2D Pokemon. NPCs scattered
Wow.
across the map. The whole concept shows just how much potential Pokemon has in this genre.
Man, they
This
should
was
have just went with this. Honestly, this would have been perfect. They were gonna go with open world, like just do this. Make the environment make the environment 3D, but make the players 2D. So it's like 2D, 3D. What did they call it again? HD 2D, like Octopath or like Star Ocean, second R. They should do that. I believe like Pokemon should just revert back to pixels and just do that. Like honestly, because the 3D models ain't working. They're just lifeless, bro. You know it, I know it, we all know it. Like
their what if moment. And here's the full map of a scenario. Also worth noting, the hot gold protagonist sprite appears here, even though that game wouldn't release for another year. Fast forward to November 28, and this build features multiple testing scenarios.
that's
And now
cool.
there's clearly more hot gold influence. As you can see, the open concept was placed inside Violet City, using
That is
assets from
so
Hot
cool.
Gold and
Look at
Soul
that.
Silver. Honestly speaking, this is probably the cleanest, most realistic version of the 2D open world idea, and it feels like the final form of that original dungeon tech demo.
And they
I would
should have
love to
went with
play a Pokemon game in this style.
they should have went with this. This is like a really great idea. Like they should have they honestly ho- actually let me ask you guys something. How would you guys feel if the next mainline Pokemon game, they revert back to this type of shit where it's like kind of like this right here, where you can move the camera, everything is all 3D and everything is the environments are 3D, but the people are sprites and stuff, and you can move the cameras and do all of that. Like just like how this gameplay is right here. Would you guys be okay with that? Um, would y'all be okay with that or no?
Another scenario puts the player in Celestic Town, but the gameplay was touchscreen based and designed only for the bottom screen, which might sound odd, but many early DS games did often prioritize the touchscreen for primary gameplay. It was
Mm.
even a concept explored for Diamond and Pearl. What's interesting here is that double tapping the screen actually makes a character jump, a
Oh,
feature we've
that's
never seen
cool.
in mainline Pokemon games,
They
and it's
should
a pretty
have
big
that.
deal, because adding a jump mechanic drastically changes the gameplay framework of
And
Pokemon,
you could just see it. Like you could just see it, bro. Like you could just tell like they were really pushing. They were really just being what's the word that I'm looking for? They were actually trying to make this game to make the best Pokemon game. They're experimenting, they're trying to see. It's like they're really doing it. And then I don't know what happened. And I'm telling you, that's what happens. Like after Gen 5 and they saw how the sales didn't do well, Gen 5, after Black and White and Black and White 2, and they saw how the sales didn't work, they just revert back to the nostalgia bait. They were so passionate about what they were doing and experimenting, really try it, and they were just crushed by the numbers, and they were like, you know what? Let's just revert back. Let's just give what everybody wants. Let's go back to 3D. Let's go to 3D. Let's give them the Kanto Pokemons. Let's just revert back to let the story be so basic. That's it.
especially tied with those early open world concepts,
Like,
it could
bro,
have completely
Jump
changed how Pokemon played.
is
The
so
next
cool.
scenario was the earliest draft of Sky Arrow Bridge, which is in fact the earliest piece of anything Unova created in game. And the last scenario was a prototype Gen 5 battle scene, which was surprisingly close to the
That
final
is so
version,
cool. Look at that.
considering how early on this was. Also, the camera could move around, which might seem like a testing feature, but then the Pokemon sprites would react depending on where the camera was. There
Mm,
was also a graphic supposed to represent trainer info, overall a nice presentation of a battle, and
that is so cool. Why don't we have this?
there was
I think you know what? This is actually a cool idea. Imagine if hold on, let
anything
me
Unova
let me let's go
created in
back real
game.
quick. Where did it go?
Version, considering how early on this was. Also, the camera could move around, which might seem like a testing feature, but then the Pokemon sprites would react depending on where the camera was. There was also a graphic
So imagine if okay, here it go. Imagine if like every Pokemon game that you're about to go into, or I said Pokemon game, every Pokemon battle you go into, like this is now it doesn't matter. Like now I don't think nowadays we don't there's no need for loading screens, right? But there's no need for loading screens. But like look at this. Imagine if like Pokemon back then, like 2008 or like 2009, right? Every time you start a Pokemon, while it's loading, it shows this, right? And then like while it's loading, it'll show your stats, your trainer info, and the player's trainer info. That shit would be so cool. And then like while the game is loading to the battle and stuff, that would be so
Supposed to
cool, bro.
represent trainer info, overall a nice presentation of a battle. And finally, the battle features two completely unused Pokemon designs. Not even placeholder designs. These feel like genuine thought out designs that were cut at some point. Then we move into December 2008,
Hmm.
where we see the earliest work on the actual Unova map. This right here is a very early version of Route 1. And one thing that immediately stands out is the scale. It's surprisingly huge, almost reminiscent of Johto's Route 30,
Right.
though the layout is completely different. Heading into Accumula Town, you can see two separate paths leading in the same direction,
Hmm.
again hinting at just how expansive Route 1 originally was. And here's what Accumula Town looked like. Right away there's some graffiti in the lower part of a map. The signpost to the right was missing, instead
Right.
some red trees in its place. The
Yep.
Pokemon Center was absent, just Pikachu graffiti where it would eventually be. One
Hmm.
especially interesting detail is the southwest exit, which originally led to another area with tall grass. In the final game, this whole section is completely closed off. Also, no tunnel transition into Route 2, just
Wow.
a seamless overworld connection. Route 2 itself had a completely different structure. I noticed just how much larger and more ambitious early Unova routes felt, especially compared to the final game. Route
Yep.
2 hadn't been fully developed yet, the northern part was utilized as a testing area. Notably, it includes the first Gen 5 Pokemon Center appearance. The interior was also different. You can also visibly see the lower level, a nice detail that kind of carries over to the final version.
Wow. Okay.
Jumping into January 2009, one scenario in the build appears to test 3D camera movement in an unidentified location. Considering how this feature remains in the final game's files, it really seems like free camera control was still being considered very late into production,
They
something
should
we
have.
wouldn't see in a mainline game until Sword and Shield.
They should have had that. They should have kept the 3D like camera movement. They should have kept that. I don't know why they didn't do it, but they should have done that.
Also,
That
a
would have
small
been
detail,
perfect.
the trees were updated from the last build. By February 1st, we start to see some major overworld changes.
What is
We
that? The
begin once
logo?
again in Accumula Town, now featuring a tunnel leading south, which wasn't in the final game, more NPCs wandering around, and the Pokemon Center is finally in its proper place. The interior remains the same as before. Heading west into Route 2, the layout stays largely consistent with a previous version, but now features updated graphics. Notably, the art style here is super unique, almost like a blend of Generation 4 and 5's aesthetics. Here's
Right.
some gameplay of the route itself.
Damn, that's crazy. Look at that. Look at that. Scale was
Interestingly, the
big.
trainer card UI is literally just a placeholder from Beta Heart Gold. The battle scenario in this build also includes a really expressive animation for the opposing Pokemon, and the move screen is extremely bare. Again, not built on top of Gen 4, and clearly built from scratch. There's even an option to play around with a fixed camera angle.
That's
And
so
finally,
cool.
this build also includes a winter map, showing how they were already experimenting with seasonal environments. Then on the February 5th build, we get a brief glimpse of the earliest version of Castelia City. Just a single
That's
snapshot,
cool.
but still significant. Moving along further to May 27, development had clearly ramped up. This build introduces a fully designed and textured New Town, along with a first proper Generation 5 styled sprites. Despite New looking close to the final version,
Yeah, they
the
look
interiors were noticeably smaller, which
right.
made me realize how spacious Gen 5 interiors ended up being. I feel like the upper floor in the player's house was even more compact than older games. We also
Wow.
get a look at the beta version of the dialogue text box. The professor's lab had some small visual differences, but the overall layout remained mostly unchanged. This random NPC seems to be standing in as a placeholder for the professor. Heading back into Route 1, this version feels slightly different, and I actually think it's even larger, especially
Yeah.
based on this area near the north. We also see an update to the trainer animation, now properly aligned with Gen 5 style. Returning to Accumula Town, the layout has been cleaned up quite a bit.
That's
The stairs
cool.
now match their position in the final game, but overall, the town still feels smaller than
It
its
looked
final
like you could also
iteration.
jump
Route 2
too.
also got an update, but it cuts off earlier than you'd expect. Just a couple days later, May 31st had this musical cutscene where various Pokemon are shown dancing, clearly a
What
prototype
the
of
fuck,
Pokemon
bro?
musicals. This build
What the fuck was that? Was that a Chimchar
this musical cutscene where
mixed? What in the world is this? What is this abomination? Well, actually, never mind. I guess that's the hat. What is this Pokemon right here? That Pokemon look cold. I ain't gonna lie.
various Pokemon are shown dancing, clearly a prototype of Pokemon musicals. This build also gives us our first glimpse at the bottom screen UI. It's still early, but the basic structure is starting to take shape. And here's a look at some general gameplay.
Right? I wonder what character is that? Was that that? I'm
The
pretty sure
Pokemon
that was the
Center
beginning
interior had
of
also
that.
been fully designed by this point, now very close to the
But
final
yeah, that
look.
looks
It was
clean
actually
now.
much smaller in this build. The final version ended up extending the space significantly.
Mhm.
Also, the color scheme was quite different. Route 2's graphics got another update, now looking much closer to the final version in terms
Hmm.
of tiles and visuals, but the layout was still completely different. Stratton City made its first appearance here as well, but at this point it was filled with placeholder Pokemon Center buildings, and here's how the area towards the west looked.
Right. Nice.
By June 4th, the focus had clearly shifted. At
Oh
this
shit,
stage,
that's
Game
cool.
Freak had a solid gameplay foundation for the early towns and routes,
Look
so
at
the
that.
attention turned towards visual polish, refining the art style, and finalizing how Generation 5 would look. Notably,
Right.
this build also includes the first
What
appearance of an
Pokemon
unused
is
Pokemon
that?
design, and the earliest rendition of a Dream Yard music.
That's cold though.
Strangely, when we return to
That's so
Stratton City, the
cold.
town appears fully
Why did they
textured.
not keep that? That shit sound really, really cold.
By August 7th, Game Freak had made some notable improvements to the
Oh, I
overall
love that.
presentation, with various visual upgrades starting to take shape.
Run.
One detail I personally love is how the doors now have a glowing effect. The
Yeah.
interiors were also updated, now feeling much more spacious and closer to the layouts we see in the final game. Though the player's house still had a few oddities. I believe
Yeah.
this scene was meant to represent the choose your starter moment, and here it looks like we're seeing the placeholders for Bianca and Jaren. And the build
Yeah.
also featured our earliest look at the Unova region map. By this point, Game Freak had built out a significant portion of Unova. In fact, this is the first build I could find where the main area of Castelia City is fully textured. I
Wow.
really
Okay.
like how this earlier Castelia Street looks. The Sky Arrow Bridge level was basically complete at this point too,
Wow,
along
that's
with all
so
of the
good.
cinematic camera angles from the final version. Here's just some miscellaneous gameplay footage from around Unova.
They should
It's
have
clear
kept.
that by now, a lot had been completed. I also noticed more variety in the wild Pokemon encounters. Stratton City had pretty much all of its final
Hold on,
textures,
let me.
and Game Freak had started populating the buildings with specific hand-picked NPCs. The development of Heart Gold and Soul Silver was wrapping up around this time, and you
Wow.
can really feel the momentum shift. By
Yep.
mid-2009, Black and White became a top priority, and more developers were clearly being assigned to the project. And the difference in pace and polish is noticeable. During this development ramp-up, we get the August 17th build. If you've seen the Black and White deep dive, you might remember that we discussed the scrap design for the Castelia City
Sorry
Pokemon
if y'all
Center,
hear
one
that in the
with dual
background.
entrances, and clearly inspired by Nintendo New York. In
That is so cool.
that video, we speculated whether or not the interior was different too, and the answer is yes. It featured a completely unique layout, exclusive to this version of a
Yeah.
Pokemon Center. The
Wow. That is really something. Like I like the fact that they actually did that. Like they made the Pokemon Center or whatever it's kind of look like the Nintendo New York Center. That's pretty cool. I definitely one day want to go over there. I haven't went to New York. Kind of reminds me of the time when I was going to drop out of high school because one of my friends told me that they wanted to like one of my friends told me that they had a ticket to New York,
design,
and
of
I was
course,
like, I was gonna
includes the
do it.
dual entrance, but also the healing area was shifted to the left, which is very odd. I don't think we've ever seen a Pokemon Center from this angle. The Pokemon remains in its usual spot. We have a PC right in front of the entrance. Honestly, if you take the left entrance, this is the most convenient Pokemon Center layout ever designed. But judging by the placement of the PCs up top and the healing station, I can't help but wonder if the original plan was to have dynamic camera angles that change as you get closer to each entrance. The inner part of Castelia City went through multiple revisions during this time. Also notably, the battle UI was finalized well
Yeah,
over
that's
a year
cool.
before release. Aside from a map progress, you can also see that Game Freak began scripting NPC behavior, making
Hmm.
them interactable, giving them movement patterns, and overall bringing the world of Unova to life. By October 13th, Game Freak had begun implementing the story events directly into the game. The game was
Yeah.
actually playable up to a decent point in the early story, even though it still used placeholder sprites and graphics to represent characters and elements that hadn't been fully added yet. I like the camera
Wow.
control in this build, especially having a wide range of fixed angles.
They
Then
should have still kept this. I don't understand why they did not keep the camera control. I honestly think that they should have kept it. Maybe maybe they did and I didn't use it because when I played this game, I was like 9. I think I was 9 years old, I think, at that time. And I didn't even like, bro, I was just, so who knows? Maybe they kept this feature, but like in a photo mode or some shit, and I just didn't pay attention. I ain't really test out the features in this game. Only played the game for its story and like just catching Pokemon. That's it.
By October 29th, we get the first build that includes Hilbert's overworld sprite, and here's some of the early designs for the starters. The game was
Ugh.
really starting to come together at this point. This was also shortly after Heart Gold and Soul Silver released in Japan, meaning
Excuse me.
Black and
Sorry
White
about that,
became Game
guys.
Freak's main focus, and
Sorry
huge
about that,
progress was
y'all.
being made every day. By December 1st, Castelia City was still going through revisions, the dual entrance Pokemon Center was still present in this build, now with an updated and more polished layout. Unfortunately, this was also the last time we ever saw the dual entrance Pokemon Center. The game started showing more and more polish throughout December. You can see it's really starting to look like the final game. Gyms were now featuring puzzles, and tons of
Oh
events were
shit.
scripted out. Graphics massively improved in the span of mere days.
Total
December
dial.
15th saw the extended prototype opening cutscene, along with a brief appearance of an unused, rumored mythical Pokemon design. There was
Oh
also a
shit, that
beta
was
title
cool.
screen featuring Zekrom perched on Sky Arrow Bridge, which is a pretty cool visual. A
They
Cunina
should have done
town's
that.
layout was finalized, and the Team Plasma cutscene was now implemented. Strangely, Lucas and Dawn sprites were still present, and interacting with this one random NPC would trigger a slowed down Dialga cry.
What the fuck?
Then by Christmas Day, Bianca finally received her overworld sprite. The Unova map UI had also been finalized, and I believe the Elite Four battles were slightly different compared to the final version. Rolling
Oh
into
shit.
January 4th, 2010, Game Freak had compiled all of the beta Unovan Pokemon sprites. Many of them had very different designs from the final versions,
Oh,
and
that's
there's
so
even a few
cool.
unused sprites that never made it into the game. Early 2010 marked the final stretch of development for Black and White. By this point, most of the game's core content had been completed. It's likely that the team aimed to wrap up development by mid-2010 to shift
Hmm.
focus towards bug testing, optimization, and localization. By the end of
Nice.
April, the game was essentially complete. Surprisingly, the only major component still missing from this build was
What's
the
that?
fully animated battle sprites for every Pokemon, which means one of Generation 5's most iconic features, the animated sprites, was one of the very last things fully added, a detail that's
Wow.
now
Okay, that's
widely
cool.
celebrated, and often cited as a key reason why many fans consider Black and White the peak of 2D Pokemon. It
It
just
is. It really is. It's not even considered. I believe that is literally is the peak. Black and White was literally the peak of of Pokemon. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I believe it is. It's not even me just being just saying. Not even me just being biased. Like everybody just knows it. Like they don't want to admit it, but that's literally what it was. Peak in storytelling, peak in like the features, peak in everything. But that time, the players did not appreciate it that time because they were so used to having the same type of Pokemons for 4 generations that for the fifth generation were completely new ones and they did not like it at all because they didn't get to play their favorite Pokemon in the beginning of the game. That's just what it is.
goes to show that even in the latest stages of game development, even though you've created an amazing game, you can still add something that
Holy shit!
reshapes the
This is
legacy of the game forever. And with that, we've officially covered the full development timeline of Pokemon Black and White. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.
that is so cool. And then oh man, yeah, man, that was great, man. That was actually pretty awesome. I love this video. I gave this guy like, hey, go subscribe or go like his video, Turtle Bro. I know this was like in August, like that was like 2 months ago, but shit, it just came up on my feed and that's just about it. But yeah, man, like it just sucks, man. It sucks how I'm definitely gonna watch this. Like, I might make a video about this one, but it just sucks how like now Pokemon, like Game Freak has just, I believe Game Freak has just like got disheartened. Is that even the right word for it? Or they just their motivation broke when this game came out and it didn't sell because they put you could tell they put their all into this game and unfortunately that was never the case. Like unfortunately people didn't recognize that. So I honestly believe we are never ever going to get this type of like passion ever again. Um, we're never gonna get that. We're just never going to get that. We're never gonna get that passion again. Honestly, we're never going to get. We're just never going to get it at all. Even with the recent, even with the recent Pokemons like Pokemon ZA, After this, even if it doesn't sell that much, we're never gonna still get that passion ever again. People, I honestly believe that people think that Pokemon will change after ZA. It's not. They're still gonna keep doing their own thing because it doesn't matter. The games, they realize that the games don't really make. You gotta understand, the games don't make them the money. Is the TG, is what do they call it? Is it TCG? The TCG gives them money. The plushie, the toys, that's what gives them money. They make games so that they can make booster packs and all these type of stuff. All these cars, I said booster packs, excuse me, but all these TCG cards and all that. That's why they make these games for, so that they can push out all of that shit. And so people are going to buy it no matter what. Sure, if they don't make as much money on the games, they know for sure people are going to buy the toys and the TCG cards and all that. People are going to buy it. They know they're going to make money from that. So that's why they just do what they do, and we're never gonna get that type of like passion ever again. It's done, in all honesty. But yeah, man, that's how Pokemon Black and White were made. It's great for me to know how it was made because this is considered my favorite generation, and it's cool to know what was going on. I'm definitely gonna watch this, and yeah. But this was such a great video from Turtle Bro, man. That was actually awesome.